What it is, what it is, what it is, good people. Welcome back once again. It's the baddest chaplain on the globe here with you, here with my brother Nick George. Nick, what's going on, brother?
What's going on, sir? Happy Sunday, happy Sabbath, all of that good stuff.
That good stuff, man. Rest is best, you know what I'm saying? Try and make sure we got enough energy to do what we got to do throughout the week. But man, it's good to be here with you, bro. How you been?
Absolutely. I'm good. I'm good, man. I'm enjoying this time sowing some stuff, soaking in some stuff. So
Right.
I'm in a good space right now. I'm in a good space.
That's healthy. That's real, real healthy. It's real healthy. I want you to take us back to the genesis of it, man. Like when did you first sort of understand yourself as someone who likes poetry? What was drawing you to poetry? Like, do you remember like when that was, where you were, all of that?
I remember always liking reading. You know,
Real.
my family always highlighted, pursuing knowledge. My mom specifically, I remember always going to the library with her and being a kid, my first thing is going for the Goosebumps, Animorphs, looking for those things. But then in school, I can't remember the actual like person that sent me to the guidance counselor.
Right, right, right.
Um, Once I was there, he asked me if I had heard of a person named Maya Angelou.
Okay.
And from there, it was like, oh, I know how to think like this. I know how to make my mind move like this. I know how to make sense with the words to really communicate what I mean to say without being held back by the Queen's English, if you will.
Yeah, yeah.
Like there was a freedom in it. So a lot of it started there. And it's been a journey of like diving deeper into finding other poets, other griots who have, been a part of, I'll say, bearing witness,
Yeah.
bearing witness to the human experience and how it dives into things that are happening to the community around us, to the, galaxy inside of us. It's always been a compelling scene for me. And here I am now writing my own poetry. So,
There it is, man. There it is. Do you remember the first poem you ever wrote?
first poem I ever wrote. It probably has something to do with a girl.
That checks. That checks.
Let the record show.
So
I do remember one of the first poems that I felt proud of. It was called The Black Enigma. And I was feeling myself because I just found out what enigma meant.
oh yeah, yeah. That's a good first big word.
I felt so proud of myself. I was
That's
like,
right.
check me out. But yeah, The Black Enigma, because there's always in my life been a curiosity about how blackness is defined. And growing up in Newark, in a city like Newark, there is a general template of what blackness is. And I had questions about where I fit into that as much as a 10-year-old can.
Got
So
you, got you.
I remember feeling like I got something here and I don't know if this is actually answering any questions, but I'm able to ask the questions that I need to ask with this piece. And yeah, I was super, super proud of it.
Yeah. I get that for sure. It's something when you finally get that courage to say, like, you know what, I've been writing these things on my own, and now I want to bring the work out to the world. So I don't know if it was Black Enigma, but do you remember that feeling of going from changing it up from just like these are my poems to like I want to share a poem with y'all? Like what went through your mind? What did you have to work through in order to share your poems publicly?
I think for a long while, I was more focused on just getting it out, but the crosswalk from just writing it to sharing it was relatively short. And I would try to test it out and like ask people, hey, you want to read this thing I wrote? And I couldn't gauge if it was good
Right.
because you want to be validated when you share stuff like
Of
that.
course.
But then I started going to like open mics at the local library and feeling like, okay, this is a good space where I can test things out and read it out. Not really performing it at this point, just like, let me see how my voice feels and how it sounds
Got you.
externalized.
Got you.
That appetite has grown a bit. And seen there's different spaces for that piece to show up. But yeah, it was a generally short journey from like, I'm writing this for me to I'm writing this for me and I hope you can see yourself in it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And that's the thing that's so dope about it. Like I think a lot about how if you're specific enough, you'll tap into the universal.
Facts, facts. Because people can tap into that. Like I may not have lived that experience, but I know so many things that have that similar shade.
Right.
right? Similar things that have that same color scheme, that same smell. When we
Yeah.
align it with different sensory experiences, like you said, like there's a universal, like I don't know that, but I know what's like that.
Right. Right. And that I think that's something that's just so, like, literally transcendent about literature of all sorts is that, I remember for example, the first time I went to Los Angeles,
Mhm.
and all I knew about Los Angeles in terms of what made me feel like I knew it was music and movies. And just the ways in which, the albums I'd listened to and the movies I'd watched had taken a place that I'd never been and made me feel like, oh yeah, that's where. And feel like I had memories there, but it's
Yeah,
not real memories. It's just memories from a book, like secondhand memories. But just that way that literature can just sort of like, you know, allow us to just be transported.
yeah, yeah. It's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing, and it's a heavy, one writer to another. It's a heavy burden to try to capture like moments in time. It can transcend distance, but I'm also of the belief that it can transcend time itself.
Right.
You know,
Totally.
like how can I, feel something written in the '70s? I wasn't part of that movement of that time in history, but there's something in it that I get. There's something in there that I'm connected to, and it's a powerful thing. It's a powerful tool to behold.
Absolutely, man. So how would you, talking about time, how would you say that your voice has evolved over time? Like, you talked about that first poem probably being about a girl to now like you've expanded the
Mhm.
topics and the range.
Yeah,
What would you describe that evolution of your voice?
I'm frequently in awe of what the spirit is doing in my life, and I don't always get it. I don't always understand it. Um, just when I think like, "Oh, I got it now," and nah,
Yeah.
nah, welcome to 101, you know?
Right.
Mm. I think when I first started writing, a lot of it was questioning, was seeking, was trying to write like, trying to be like or sound like anybody from like Sonia Sanchez to John Legend. Like,
That's real.
I want to make sure that if it's good, I know it's good because it sounds like what they wrote on that one track. And then I began to feel a bit convicted of how I was using my voice. And I remember through college, I wanted to maybe make it okay to invite other people to join me, wanting to seek community in it.
Got you.
And shortly after college, I began this wild ride of a nonprofit journey. And a lot of my
Yeah.
writing was revolved around being a loudspeaker for other issues, for other people, for making a space available for people to join me once again. But there was some distance there from what I wanted to write about. It wasn't anything that I was disingenuous about,
Right.
but there was a gap between my identity as a poet there. And I think I'm coming back around to really interrogating what it is that's important for me to inquire. And I'm in this really, really raw space of curiosity right now. Curiosity about so much that really doesn't have much to do with poetry.
Yeah, I get that. Just
It
life
really,
in general.
just life in general, like this new season of fatherhood and
Yeah.
husbanding and being a part of this community and in this age of empire. Like, how do I show up in a truly healthier version of myself,
Right.
equipped to be a resource, but being fully resourced in myself. Like, what does that look like? So this is by far the most curious I've ever felt poetically compared to when I first started. It's funny, before we got on earlier today, I was in a generative writing workshop where we were prompted to write about a particular adversary with allies at our side. And I'm like, I love this kind of invitation
Yeah.
where it's not base level, surface level. We're going beyond the pale now. And we've got to be sourced within to know who's on our side, who's standing next to us,
Come
and
on.
what the actual enemy is, what's our
Come
true
on.
north and what's behind us. So I'm in that place where I'm like, yeah, let's go. Let's
Yeah.
go.
That's real healthy. Because what I like about that is that I think about how some artists have very different approaches. Like I thought about, it might have just been like a reel. It wasn't that deep. I saw a reel where Birdman was talking about how much he wanted Lil Wayne to be like Tupac, so
Hmm.
he just had him record music all the time.
Hmm.
And then I think about artists like Sade, for example, who go a decade, sometimes a decade plus between albums, and they
Right.
just live their lives. And I don't think that either is necessarily wrong to say I'm gonna do quality versus saying I'm gonna do quantity. But I do think that there has to be some sort of material that you're basing all of this off of, like
Yeah.
something that amazed me about Vibes Cartel, for example, is that he was talking about what was going on in the world while he was incarcerated,
Yeah.
like, and was speaking about it really precisely. I was like, how you know what that's like right now?
Yeah.
Like, how can
Yeah.
you? I know you got memories, but like, you really talking about this so vividly, like you just did
Mhm.
this last night, but you are incarcerated. And I think that there is that whole sense of you gotta like keep adding source material. But to your point, I think being able to really not just deal with the shallow level of it, but going beyond the prompt and go and get really up underneath it so you can really make it something impactful is worthwhile too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm hoping to, as much as I am doing it for myself, and I realize this is like a core value of my writing. I want to make sure I'm contributing to the collective experience. I consume a lot of media, you know,
Sure.
from being a child of the 80s and 90s and just the rush of information that's come our way. There's so much consumption coming out. And even as it stands at this point in history, there's so much risk of our experiences being just wiped away or
Totally.
disregarded.
Totally.
And I believe that it is a soulful responsibility to bear witness and to keep record and to stand as a testimony and a testament.
Yeah.
So, as much as I am curious, I am very aware of that responsibility of like show and prove,
Absolutely.
right? Like as much as you
Absolutely.
consume, show and prove.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that's really fair. Because I don't know. It doesn't feel like a lot of people are thinking that way. It feels like it's just, to your point, so easy to consume all the time
Yeah.
and never make that transition from consuming to creating.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I feel like there's some art. Like I know when I see like a fantastic movie, I want to go create. So I don't necessarily want to go make a movie, but I want to go create something. If I listen to a good album, it makes me want to make music. So I do think that there is a necessity of like engaging with the like fire hose of media so that we can go create some dope stuff. But at the same time, it's just so much stuff that I think brain rot is real. I think
Yeah.
all the ways in which we've just made ourselves dumber because we're just like mindlessly consuming things horrifying to me. You know what
And
I'm
it's
saying?
convenient. It's so convenient.
So convenient.
I remember I was watching something online where it was one of those street interviews.
Yeah.
So the cat was asking like, "All right, what's your hot take?" And I think she said, "We need to bring back the remote control.
Yeah. I love that.
We need to bring back the remote control because there was such curation that took place
Yeah.
of like what our identities became." My full-time job is an educator, so I'm watching our young people really try to go through the process of understanding who they are, but they have so much on the platter in front of them that they are having a really hard time curating an actual, like, authentic, individualized self,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that that's a task for us. I guess we can call ourselves like elders or emerging elders.
We at least at Unk status. I know
Unks,
that
we
much.
are unks.
We definitely
I
are
got
Unk.
unked a couple times last week, so
Yeah, we definitely are Unk.
it's there. But it's on us as the elders and creatives, to kind of guide that curation process since we don't really have remote controls like that no more.
Yeah.
We gotta figure out how to, like, invite them to a world of, like, asking them what they want it to look like.
Yeah.
Out of all of this you got in front of you, what is actually singing to you? What's actually calling to you?
Right. I love that though, because that's a way that I think we were at like the beginning of civilization in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Where this is don't take this as like I'm saying that people supposed to go back to like a feudal system. That's not what I'm saying at all. Jamming myself up. But like there's something about something about being like, oh, this is a trade that has been taught
Mhm.
generation after generation after generation that I'm going to now learn. I think how I want to like incorporate that in like modern times, and I feel like I'm trying to do this with my kids, is really being a part of their world and observing what they're into. Rather than me
Yeah.
being like, oh, you gotta do this. Like, of course I'm, Jamaican American. So I'm gonna say you took up your book for a month and I'm gonna do that. But at the
Yeah, yeah,
same
yeah, yeah.
time,
Yeah, yeah,
at
yeah.
the same time, I'm gonna be like, what are you into now? What's going on
Mhm.
with you? And following that and then trying to give them the resources so they could pursue that, even if it just ends up being something fun, but at least so they can do that thing really well. So maybe it hits the spark and ignites something within them, you know?
Yeah, yeah, God willing.
Yeah, man. That's really it. So how do you go about doing that sort of conversation that we're having, whether it be with the young people in your classroom or the people in your workshops? Like, how do you create that space for others to write and really engage in the material?
I recognize that when it comes to any kind of pursuit, there's a bit of a barrier, and it ends up feeling either like this super lofty ideal, like, oh, I could never be Erica Badu. I shouldn't do it at all.
Right, right, right.
Or like, how am I going to make money off of this? I don't really need it.
That's real too.
Make it happen quick so I can move on.
Yeah.
And what I like to do with my workshops is level the playing field a bit. One of our agreements is that you are the standard. Right, and I that was fed to me as,
Yeah.
as I participated in workshops.
No doubt.
You are the standard. You're not trying to be Talib Kweli. You're not trying to
Right.
do all of these Cornell West type of verbal acrobatics.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You are the standard. What you do with that is up to you.
Right.
All I'm trying to do is make sure that you feel like you have an access point to this thing.
Huh?
I do believe that we all have creativity inside of us. We just need the invitation. So I try to start the conversation there. And then, each workshop experience is different, like every classroom is different.
No doubt.
Every person that comes with it comes with their own life experiences, their own biases, their own access points. So I try to thread the needle as carefully as possible. I will say, along with this new stage of curiosity that I'm in,
Huh?
there's a bit of daringness that's a part of it. So whereas before I was content with the access point being what it was, I do want to maintain that, but I want to invite folks to a little bit more of a boldness in what we're going to be talking about. I want to invite a little bit more, I wish somebody would kind of energy,
Sure, sure.
or I'm not supposed to say this kind of energy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I really want to tap into some of that stuff because I feel that there's a lot of fertility in the space where community is allowed to be curious. So I like tapping into that, and then from there, you may not write a thing. We might just talk.
That's real though.
Like we
That's
might
really real.
just talk. We do, we it's writing, but the conversation that happened in that is just it's fulfilling to me.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get that. But I think especially in the ways, because I think writing at its core is a form of communication,
Hmm.
right? Like above all else, like whatever is being written is intended to be read, even if it's just read by yourself.
Right,
It's
right.
intended to communicate something. Because I know I can revisit something I wrote 3 months ago and be like, "Yo, what was I on at that time? Like, what was going on in my life?" Like, I'm like
Hmm.
engaging with someone who is not inherently me anymore.
Right, right.
So I think that there's so much about the ways in which communication has evolved over time, the ways in which our engaging with ideas. Like I just found myself once again kicking getting to my sons and saying, so what I'd heard, the adage I'd heard, which is that like small minds talk about people,
Hmm.
mediocre minds talk about events,
Hmm.
and great minds talk about ideas. And I think the way in which you allow a person to engage in this exchange of ideas is vital. We are just churning out the same sort of like, did you hear what they said or what they
Hmm.
did or what went on, which isn't generative at all. It's just like we just get sludge.
Yeah, yeah, and it's lazy. It's not generative. It's not healing. It's not filling. It's it's Doritos.
Yo, straight up.
It's
Straight
it's
up.
it's not it's not good for. I mean, and that's not to shame anybody that needs a little bit of Cooler Ranch in their life, but a steady diet of that, you got to invite some core concept of you as you engage in these things, not a
Absolutely.
facsimile, not a rerun. Some originality is always enviable, always desired.
100%. 100%. So what do you believe poetry unlocks for people? Think about that person who's like, I'm not Erica Badu, I'm not Cornell West, I'm not John Legend. Like, what do you think poetry unlocks for people who don't even consider themselves writers?
Think when it comes to poetry, one of the most slept on elements of it is its inherent flexibility in developing and framing a worldview. There's a flexibility in it because if we start with our primary communication device, which is language, and then you now can play with that language, then you can include other elements using that language to enhance perspective on something. So soon and very soon, we're not really even talking about poetry. We're not focusing on the craft of poetry itself. We're just using it to expand the flexibility to manage different conversations and topics, you know? Like, imagine if, which this is a piece I'm actually trying to work on, but imagine if poetry could be given as actual prescriptions.
That'd be tough.
Like,
Take 2 sonnets and call me in the morning.
right, you know? Like, take a hit of this last poets and see me
That's
in 2 weeks.
that's right. We'll do
But
some
then
labs after that, right.
taking it past it, like, what if our politicians were poets?
But we had that. We had that. That was a thing. This is not that part is not a, like, far-fetched thing. One of the
It's
things
not.
I had a goated 5th grade European history I wanna call him professor. His name was
Mhm,
George Snook, and Snook was just, like, real cool white dude, the long braid down his back, and he would just wax poetically about European history. And he made us all read Voltaire, and
mhm,
Voltaire would talk about philosopher kings. You're
mhm.
describing a philosopher king.
Yeah,
If you Christian or you Jewish, like David would have been a philosopher king. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
I feel like this whole notion, and you about to get me going, bro. Like
I know.
we have dogged out the humanities in the United States like it's
So,
nothing, and it gets me tight.
take. I got a hot take,
Please.
and it's actually not that hot. It's been simmering on the pot for a minute. As much as I love being a poet and performing and everything, my love-hate relationship with slam poetry has gone up and down over the years.
Yeah, I'm not really a fan personally, but I hear you.
And I recognize that it's not so much as it is about slam poetry, but it's really like the bastardization of poetry across our landscape and the role that humanities used to play, and it's
Right.
commodified at this point. So maybe
Yes.
it's not so much of a hot take, it's just a gripe I have.
It's a gripe, but
It's a
I
gripe.
sh I share that gripe with you. My gripe, I'm coming at it from another angle, which
Mhm.
is when we were coming up and I would go to, like, New Yorican and Bowery and spots like that, I felt like it was at the same time that we needed great MCs in rap.
Yeah.
Like, in, like, the early 2000s, I was like that it kinda dipped, and I feel like all these people who would have been great rappers were doing
Mhm.
slam poetry, and I was like, "Hip hop is experiencing a brain drain right now. We need y'all over here. Please, please
Man.
come rap." Because that's what I was like, "You were so dope.
Yeah.
Please just rap. I need you to rap instead of because only people hearing this are other people who are doing this, whereas rap can reach the masses, and the masses need what you're kicking right now."
See, but then that's where I see the connection between exactly what you're saying and when we use that language regarding different movements or movements of resistance and rebellion. Everyone can't be the same thing, right? And I'm with you. Like, I don't understand how some of the best creative philosophical minds are in a crowded basement somewhere in South Orange while Soldier Boy has how many chances to be on the radio? I was one of the main ones. I was at the Hip Hop is Dead funeral. I was
Yeah.
one of those.
He was at the repass.
I was there, yet 20 years removed,
Right.
looking back at it, there has to be a space for truth tellers and storytellers to exist in as many forms and exist in as many
Agreed.
spaces as possible.
Agreed.
Because if we only keep them in front of a mic, the only people that'll hear them are those standing in front of the speaker.
I hear that.
So we need poets at the grocery store, and we need poets, in front of the classroom, and we need poets where there are no mics to be found, but moving in such a way that is once again flexing out our worldviews and how we see things, so that way it can illuminate it without an 808.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you know how dope that is? That
Mhm.
connects to, I saw, Mech, who used to be on My Expert Opinion, talking about this. He was saying how he had had a conversation with Nas, about everyone playing the beat selection and saying that he doesn't have good beats, and he was like, it's intentional because I really want you to pay attention to what I'm saying. Like, I viewed it as a challenge to have a beat that wasn't, like, gonna necessarily do well in the club, but I was using it so that you could really pay attention to what I'm saying. I think to your point, a lot of the times we, in the most general sense of the word, we get so caught up in, "Oh, that's a bop. I'm really
Mhm.
excited to hear the music," that I'm missing out on what message is being conveyed.
Right.
And I don't think that we have allowed ourselves collectively to flex our brain muscles well enough to say, I can be entertained and educated at the same time.
Yeah. 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 It takes time. It takes time, and I think the it's a trip because once you mentioned like that early aughts period, like that really was a challenge to get through.
It was. It
It really
was
was
it
a
was not an
challenge
easy
to get through.
time.
But it usually reflects the state of things
Right.
sociologically,
Right. Right.
politically, and while there is much to lament, there's much to lament right now. I'm excited for how the artists stand up in this time
Yeah. Me too. Me
and
too.
resource each other
Yeah.
and resource the people
Right.
and push that power back to the people.
Yeah.
Because once we lose sight of it, or rather place that power elsewhere, and we outsource our power, you know, it ends up being a revisit to that struggle time, not necessarily musically or sonically, but just like in our humanness, our humanity, our God image
Yeah.
gets shadowed and shattered a bit. So I'm looking forward to seeing um how we emerge.
No doubt.
It's gonna be a bumpy ride. It's been a bumpy ride.
Right.
And I will say, I think we're in a better space to include more of humanity in this journey, in this trek. I think that each movement that has included the artists had, or rather held on to some really, really messy identity politics that made it hard for everyone to come to the table and contribute. And I think that at this point in history, we're in a better place. It's not the Garden of Eden, but we're in a better place of putting our resources together and understanding how to survive and how
Yeah.
to thrive.
That's it. You know, I hear you saying that, and I'm still skeptical
Mhm.
because I feel like there are people. I sincerely believe this. I remember watching Top Gun Maverick in the
Mhm.
theater, like, right, this is like COVID was still happening, but we had
Yeah.
vaccines at least, and I remember watching it and being like, "Oh, there are people who view Top Gun as, like, the peak of, like, human experience, like, this
Yeah.
is when society was great and, like, men were men and all that stuff."
Yeah.
And I see people, and not just like, because this is like a common misstep. I think a lot of people think a lot of the challenges in society with like not being loving enough and being too restrictive and exclusive are things that just like older people want. But I'm
Yeah.
seeing, and I'm not alone in this, a lot of people are seeing younger generations like Gen Z really living into a lot of these exclusive, less loving tropes that aren't really trying to do what you and I are talking about. They don't want a table where everyone has a seat. They want a smaller table. They've been conditioned online to think that, something's been taken from them. So how do we reach that? How do we, like you and I are kicking poems and
Yeah.
Jesus, how do we do that in a world that has like, energy drinks and misogyny? I'm just trying to figure that out.
You know, I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say, and uh, I'll let myself feel bad about it tomorrow. Can't save everyone. Can't save everyone, and I don't mean that you willingly kick them off the boat. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that lessons, unfortunately, have to be learned in due time, and I am a firm believer that the spirit's gonna show up regardless
Yeah,
for everyone to see. And it's
yeah,
up to you to decide what you do with that lesson. As for me, my resources are for my people and those who want it, right?
yeah.
My resources are for my people and those who want it. To continuously exert energy after you've said explicitly that you don't want it, cool,
Yeah,
cool. Godspeed.
I hear you.
Godspeed.
I hear you. Cause I think it was James Baldwin said you can't wake a man who's pretending to be asleep.
True, true.
So
Oh,
I hear
man,
you.
boy, that's so true. Slight detour. One of my kids likes to play sleep.
Yes.
Every time we pull up at the house, we know you're not sleeping. "Oh,
Right.
you wanna play? Bet. Good luck. You better hurry up before we lock the door."
I'm saying. I'm saying. No, but it's really because I think that's where, especially like your typical like do-gooder's heart is like, no, I gotta keep trying. I can't give
Mhm.
because we will often say like, nah, I can't give up on anyone, which I think still fits with what you're saying, right? Like you're offering you're having a hospitality, you're being generous to people, but there are people who don't want what we're talking about.
Right. Or maybe I'm not the one to deliver it for them to want it
That
this
too.
way,
That too. That's another
right?
one too. That's another
And
one too.
and I'll say, that took that took some time. That was a part of the journey. Like, I may not be the carrier of
Yeah,
the fruit that's gonna speak to you, right? Maybe you need it from somebody with different skin. Maybe you need it from someone in a different gender. Maybe you
yeah,
need
that's
it from
real.
somebody with a different accent. Maybe you
Yeah,
need it from someone who has more aligned politics with you that's literally saying the same thing, but you gotta take this
come
route to
on,
get there. Maybe
come
that's
on.
the case, but I gotta allow myself enough room from my desire to be the source. Because guess what? I'm not the source.
No, you certainly not.
I'm not the source.
Not.
So I gotta be okay with, like, you know, not everybody's coming to my joint. Nobody everybody's seen my stuff or co-sign it or you don't like it or whatever.
Yeah,
Cool.
you got it.
Godspeed.
Yeah, you got it for real. So do you see yourself as someone who like moves between these worlds I'm about to describe? Or do you see yourself as like locked into one? Like I'm thinking about your work as like activist work, spiritual work, perhaps it's something else. Like do you see yourself primarily one of those modalities or like another modality we haven't named yet or just sort of like flowing between those modalities depending on the context?
I think that language is still being developed, but I do think that I exist at the intersection of many things, and it's going to be hard for me to stay with one thing. If I was a poetry teacher, I would maybe spend 20% of the time actually talking about poetry. Like, I aspire to be a creative writing teacher, but so much more of the time would be talking about different elements that are part of that and what they then contribute to. So maybe some of that is, spirituality. Maybe some of that is activism, or maybe some of it's just bearing witness. Maybe it's just talking about it. Like, there's room now and there's
Right.
space now, and I'm old enough now to have a little bit of intentionality with how I maneuver. But there's so much intersection, and I think that's how it's supposed to be.
Got you. Got you.
I think that's how it's supposed to be. The minute you call yourself a creative, there's intersectionality taking place.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Of course. I'm with that. I'm with that. How would you say you keep yourself grounded and inspired in your work? Like, because it's easy to kind of run out of gas. Like, what keeps you going?
Sleep.
Yo, I told my wife the other day, I said, man, there's nothing for me outside after the sun go down, yo.
Listen, it's challenging.
There's nothing for me out there no more.
It's
You
challenging.
you you remember I used to be outside all the
Listen,
time.
come on now. And the pathway was right there. Like, how could you not?
Listen, I was right there.
How could you not? That time is past. You got to make a strong case.
Hang
I
my
mean,
jersey up. I come to the old timers game and just wave at the crowd. I can't do
yeah.
that no more.
But say that not even in as much just as you think. There used to be this thing of like trying to go out and so much. And maybe that's just me, or maybe that's a generational thing. But I don't have that desire really to prove myself anymore. I think I feed myself by actually feeding myself.
That's real.
Like literally and metaphorically. We were coming back home and my wife went in the gas station to get some snacks and she brought me back some low fat protein chips. I was mad. I said,
Uh, tastes like
but
chalk.
but but I'm actually like eating it and like, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I gotta get my mind right, get myself right. Like,
Right.
what's the point of me trying to be out here doing so much and cholesterol got me down?
Nah, we don't want that.
Rest is taking on a new definition post grind mode.
Yeah.
And I know how to get it. Like
Right.
that's the name of the game.
Right.
But The whole forsaking everything else just for the sake of getting it. There's got to be a time for Sabbath rest. There's got to be a time for recline. And I think being mindful about the consumption. I've been reading so much more now, so much more about spirituality and ritual and, placemaking and masculinity. And like, it's just making sure that I'm feeding myself the things that are not just for the sake of poetry, but like
Yeah.
feeding me,
Right, right, right.
because I hope that as I create, it's coming from an overflowing cup. I'm not scraping the bottle
No
for the
doubt.
leftover jelly. Like, I'm hoping that it's coming from a flourishing.
Yeah, yeah. Because I feel like operating in that abundance
Mhm,
mindset is where God wants us to be.
for sure.
And it's almost like commerce and this relationship with art will make you want to just like get to that point where you gotta like scrape the jelly out of the jar. But that's not really a healthy place for you. You can't sustain that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's not. It's it's antithetical to the whole thing. It's supposed to come from you. And if you ain't feeding you, there's gonna be some toxicity and hot gas coming out.
Yeah, that's a fact. So what's something that you're working on that now that excites you? Could be like an upcoming workshop, collection of poetry. Like I don't think we've mentioned your latest collection of poetry. So you can tell the people about that as well, man.
Sure thing. So my most recent collection is called Carnegie Halls and Shower Stalls, and it's actually just a piece of a different poem. But what I'm essentially doing is shouting out the artists who do their best work behind closed doors, but then daring to reveal it. A lot of us do our best Luther Vandross with a shower on,
Right, 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 right.
but I wanted to do something that felt um, like something was being revealed, but also it felt like a restart in many ways, like kind of a purge before a restart.
No doubt.
And with that, I'm actually really, really proud of that work. My first collection came out in college, and that was really just doing it to say I did it,
Right, right, right.
doing it to say I did it.
I get
I'm
that.
glad for that experience, but I feel quite proud of that collection that came out, I think 2023, 2022,
Okay.
one of those. I'm actually haven't announced it yet, but a workshop that I'm planning for June is exploring and understanding the self through poetry. And there's a couple of writers that do a really good job of detailing their journey and how it lends to their own self identity. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. There's a few actually. I'm not going to spill all of them right now. One I'm looking forward to in August, and I have it written down right here. Or I guess I could say a mutual friend of ours, to me, Spencer Helms,
Yeah.
was with me at a retreat recently where we were talking about how there's a nerve involved with being this hopeful and this committed to revolution work. And I see that same nerve echoed with different creative movements and collectives throughout history. So I wanted to let's peek into that. Let me
Yeah.
see if I can craft a workshop around looking at creative collectives, specifically Black creative collectives within the 20th to 21st century,
Yeah.
and just like taking some ideas and generating some work from their journey, from what they've done, from
No
their
doubt.
highs and lows and spaces in between. I don't think that's it though, because like I said, there's so much happening in this world around us and so much to respond to,
Come on.
you know? So I'm really looking forward to cracking into some really, really tasty stuff.
Yeah, man. No, it's a good space. It's a good space. It's a real, real good space for real. So if you could leave, the audience with like one poem, it could be your own, could be someone else's that really feels like this poem gets me. What would it be and why?
Not by me.
It could be. I would have picked one by myself if I had to answer this question.
This I just wrote this. That we working through America Mine by Sasha Banks, an ill poet. Definitely should check her out. She has some stuff up on YouTube. But she does a lot of great work with I don't want to say geographical horror. That feels weird. It is, but her work, America Mine, is looking at America pre, during, and post decline, and like assessing that through a poetic lens. And it's a really, really powerful work. But she has a piece in there called America Mine. So it's like the titular poem. And the poem ends with all the living after this will be the vengeance. And I heard that. I was like, that's so bar.
That is a bar. That is a bar.
I wrote this after America Mine.
Right, right, right.
All the living after this will be the vengeance. After the final ship of the Empire crash lands somewhere where the vines are hungry to reclaim what is theirs, after the stock markets are no longer funding hunger and theft across the galaxy and there is nothing left to buy, after all the guns and bullets and rifles and weapons of male ego destruction are rendered biodegradable by the sheer will and poetics of the people, after the light comes on and darkness is forced back to its place because everything has its place and vengeance has a place like here and there and now, but now has to wake up for then. And living has a place now. And now we breathe in an air meant for lungs that expand to hold rebellions. And now we see something blacker in the mirror, blacker, not darkness. And now we link arms and join voices and meet eyes and hold hands and drink the same water from this side of the light. And now vengeance looks less like a reaction and more like a reality, more like being, more like hair. And now for all the agos and ages, and more like life, and life more abundantly.
Fire. You got my theological brain tingling, like eschatology all up in there, man. It's really, really dope. I feel like that's like I remember Chronix had a line where he said, when you can't when he said something like to the essence of when a grain of rice and a Rolls Royce are the same price.
My Lord,
And I said, yo,
my God,
but that's what you said made me think about. You talk about the stock market no longer being connected to hunger and theft. It made me think about, and this ain't no original ingenious thought by any means, but I never thought watching Star Wars would be so necessary to understand where we at. I always thought Star Wars was just entertainment. And to see how much, we're recording this on May the 4th. And just
mm,
to see how much,
mm.
dang,
Let's go.
Star Wars is like required
Man,
watching now.
they was doing something in the 70s.
They
They was
was
on
cooking.
something. They was cooking something.
George Lucas is like, y'all gonna need this. You ain't gonna understand it right now necessarily, but y'all gonna need this.
Yeah,
Trust.
who that?
Yeah. Oh man, I thought we were just having fun. I ain't know. I ain't know how necessary it's gonna be, man. How do you hope that your poetry and your workshops impact people? Like thinking about if someone leaves one of your shows or reads your book or leaves a workshop, what do you want them to remember?
That they're not alone. I hope my kids find it. I hope I hope people feel seen and safe and invited. I've never been a fan of the ivory tower of academia and sounding so smart. Like that's not what poetry is supposed to make you feel. You can be smart. Please be smart.
Be smart, right?
Be mindful of what you're doing and what you're writing. But I have no desire for there to be distance between us.
Yeah,
You know, um,
got you. That
this is
eminence is important.
it's got to be real.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I think that's unanimous. I think that like artists agree. Like you want somebody to see themselves in some way, whether it's in the light or the shadow or the dark side. You know,
Yeah, yeah. Come on, right?
yeah.
That part too.
So I don't necessarily want applause. It's just that like I felt that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel
got
like
you.
that's far more valuable because you can do something with what you feel.
Yeah, for real, for real, for real. Yeah, and if it just is reduced to like entertainment, like, oh, good job, then that doesn't change me. Cause I've actually been kind of tight
Hmm.
when I said something like really from the heart and people are like, oh, that's so good. I'm like, nah, like I need you to like change how you live.
Did you get it though?
Did you get it though? You feel me or not?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I would never forget. Recently, actually, I was at a slam. I didn't mean to participate at all. I just showed up.
Accidental slam.
And it was like, yeah, come on. I was like, all right, let me find something. And I don't even remember the piece I did. I made it up to the second round and got eliminated because of time. Like I went over a couple seconds.
Got you, got you, got you.
But on my way out, and he was like an actual OG, like O had stopped me at the door. He was like, hey man, these cats in here don't really know what you were just talking about. But you was dropping some dimes in there when you had said this, and it just hit me in the heart. And I was like, This felt so much better than whatever I would have got at this slam.
Right, right.
This felt like not even what's the word? Like redemptive, you know? But it wasn't even like a L. Like I didn't take a L by not winning the slam. Like it did what it was supposed to do.
For sure.
Like dude felt hurt. Dude felt like this held some value for him
Yeah.
in his world.
Resonated.
And man, that was cool.
That's it, man. That's it. Nah, that's a
Yeah.
beautiful space. That's a real beautiful space. Yeah, man. So how can we support your work, man?
I would love for Carnegie halls and shower stalls to reach somebody who needs it. It's currently available on Amazon for the time being, but you can access it through my website at nickgeorgethepoet.com. I will be doing a few more workshops before the year is out. So, in order to stay tuned and connected to that, just once again, find me on my site or on my socials Instagram, Nick George the Poet, as well as Facebook. Anything else is doing too much for me.
I tried to have it on like 10 different platforms. It's too much. I'm
It's
like,
a lot.
I'm an office of one. This is too much.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. But if anything else, I would say read Black poetry. Read Black poetry. They're taking away our history and they're trying to take away our legacy. But if we're gonna resist this thing, it starts with the reading.
That's it, man. We can't lose recipes, man.
At all, I got a couple over there right now.
I'm telling you. It has to be known, man. Brother, as always, appreciate you being here. Good people, as always. You can find this in every episode of Baddest Chaplain at baddestchaplain.com. We on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok.
TikTok, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's the one at Baddest Chaplain for all that good stuff, y'all. Till next time, be blessed. We out here. Peace.